Hello everyone, Alasdair Gold here. Things just aren't getting better for Tottenham Hotspur right now, are they? 5 defeats out of 6 Premier League matches, and yesterday did not help a lot of the frustration and certainly anger across social media last night, or in the afternoon and last night. But I mean, let's talk about it. I mean, just first off, yes, another new location in the house. Obviously, like I said, just moved house, so new things, new furniture arriving with every day as we try and settle in. So these videos are going to look slightly different each time, which might be a good thing, might be a bad thing. And as always, apologies for the little chips and things in the wall. They've got to be fixed and painted over at some point. But we'll get around to that. But Tottenham Hotspur are keeping me rather busy right now. If anyone had seen, I tweeted out last night about the game, and it was one that it got a kind of a mixed reaction, and I totally understand why. I mean, first off, you can only put so much in 240 characters nowadays in tweets. But I mean, first off, Tottenham should not be happy with losing to West Ham in any shape or form. Tottenham shouldn't be happy with losing any match, quite frankly. And yes, Tottenham should have beaten West Ham yesterday. 100% they should have. The point of my tweet, though, what I said in my tweet was, in the big picture, completely frustrating, and the anger is completely justified. 5 defeats out of 6 is rubbish. It's absolutely terrible form. It's like I say, the big picture obviously is far more worrying. My point was, I actually felt for long periods of yesterday's game against West Ham that Spurs played quite well. And obviously, anyone that chose to ignore the top half of what I said on my tweet got very annoyed, which, as we always know, frustration's running high, and I totally get that. But I just felt, for me, you cannot ignore 2 daft, simple, basic defensive mistakes again, which we'll come to. Which obviously, as soon as you do that, it's kind of handicapping you. It's like chopping you off at the legs, whatever you tried to do else in the rest of the game. And I think Spurs fluff their lines in front of goal a lot, but and I know it sounds daft, and I know obviously not conceding goals and scoring goals is the key thing of a match. Of course it is. But what I was kind of saying, I actually felt that I kind of felt not a bit of dread about the match, but I felt with West Ham in such good form, in 5th place, doing so well and playing so well in their matches, I actually expect Tottenham to have a really tough time of it for long periods of the game. But it kind of wasn't the way. And I actually felt from an attacking point of view and from a motivation point of view and in terms of trying to make things happen, I was actually pleasantly surprised with Tottenham. Of course, the result, the mistakes, the fluffing in front of goal completely doesn't mean you come away from that match happy. And I think that's what some of the people that weren't happy with the tweet failed to understand. No one's walking out for the match whistling and going, hey, that was pretty good, wasn't it? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm actually saying was in terms of the style of play, and I think it was similar to Everton. Obviously, you cannot just ignore the defensive side of things because that's the massive gaping hole in what Mourinho's trying to do right now. But I do feel that having all of us, and myself included, moaned about the style of football, the lack of chances created, the problems in getting up the pitch, I actually feel that in recent matches there's kind of been improvements in that. If anything, it's just chances not being put away. Spurs had 20 shots on goal at the London Stadium yesterday compared to West Ham's 4. I've seen some people saying, oh yeah, but they only started playing when they were 2-0 down. I don't entirely agree with that. I felt that Spurs created chances in the first half as well. Not as many as in the second half, but I do feel they created chances. And I felt that, and the other argument people were saying is, yeah, but West Ham didn't have to attack. West Ham scored their goals. They were quite happy to sit back. I'd say that was the case if they were shutting out Spurs. But I didn't think they did. I think Spurs had enough chances, Yes, 16 of those 20 shots weren't on target, and I think that was more a damning indictment of the shooting. Kane had a couple, I think one in the first half and maybe one just after the break that he put wide from quite decent positions, albeit slightly tighter angle, but they're the kind of ones that Kane puts on target. Obviously, Bale hit the crossbar, Son deflection that hit the post. Spurs had chances. Yes, of course, there were a few blazed over from outside the box, but some of them, like Son teeing up Lucas Moura just on the edge of the box, that just needs a controlled shot towards goal. That can either go in, that can hit a body, that can deflect, whatever. But obviously, it was right into the stratosphere. So for me, that's the kind of side of the game that I was actually pleasantly surprised with. But again, that's a massive caveat that in terms of, no walking away happy from the match, because that's not the case. Spurs didn't take those chances. There's still, even Harry Kane, I felt, looked a little bit out of sorts yesterday. There was one moment when I think it was Bale put him down the right, and he advanced right into the West Ham box, and he had Dele Alli and Son Heung-min, breaking into the box, both ahead of their defenders. All Kane had to do was play the ball across that awkward area between keeper and players, and one of them would have slid it in, and he hit it too kind of backwards rather than sideways, and it was cut out. And actually, that was what led to Bale's volley, which we'll have a little chat about later. But just little things like that aren't quite clicking right now. But I do feel that Spurs' attacking movement is getting better. Like I say, 69% possession of the ball as well, which, yes, if anyone should know that possession doesn't mean anything or everything, it's certainly Mourinho and Tottenham this season. But I did feel that going there in a game that, for me, Spurs have kind of been bullied and bossed, I think, at West Ham, whether it was Upton Park or London Stadium in recent years. It's been a ground where they've often tripped up at. And I felt that in terms of the play, Tottenham kind of had something a little bit more about them. But ultimately, doesn't matter. Means nothing because of the result, because of those goals. And defensive side of things, there's no getting away from it. We've got to talk about it. It's just growing more and more painful to watch. You can tell Mourinho's just getting visibly more and more frustrated. Of course, people will say, well, that's on him for the defenders he's picking. But, quite interesting. I felt the Lingard goal especially came at a time, and I've got a stat written here somewhere. Yeah, that's the 7th goal that Tottenham have conceded in the opening 15 minutes of the second half in the Premier League this season. 7th goal during that little period. It's pretty much a damning indictment on whatever Mourinho is saying at half-time. Obviously that's the time when everyone's supposed to be organised. Although he would maybe argue you can't legislate for a player then coming out and then making individual mistakes. And I feel like in this position I'm going to do that a lot, which is not really meant to make me look wise or I'm thinking. It just seems to be a natural thing. Apologies for that. But yeah, that period after half-time, the only time that Spurs concede more goals is at the end of the match. The final 14 minutes of a match, they've conceded 8 in the Premier League this season. So there's clearly as concentration levels there. It's getting started when they come out of after the break, and also when they're seeing out matches. They're not doing it properly, and that's about concentration, that's about focus. Interestingly, while I completely feel that Tottenham don't wake up quickly enough in first halves, actually, Michail Antonio's goal in, 4 minutes, was only the second goal Spurs have conceded in the opening 15 minutes of a match in the Premier League this season, which is weird. I actually thought that would be worse. I kind of feel that they start really sluggishly, but actually it's more in terms of their attacking play that they actually are really sluggish. I say that, I was about to say that, and then I'm going to destroy what I just said with a stat, but actually Spurs have scored, I've got it written down here somewhere, 9 goals in those first 15 minutes. So once they come out of the initial early stages, when they get towards that end of the 15 minutes, I think that's where the bulk of those goals come from. So it's funny, but then I suppose the flip side of that is sometimes we've seen it, Spurs have scored early goals and then they've sat back, and it's been actually quite a negative thing. Only Spurs could make scoring an only goal a negative thing. But yesterday it was just, it's a defensive mistake. It's just one of those you kind of cringe every time there was a set piece. West Ham slung into the box, you kind of like watching it, expecting something bad to happen. But actually, Spurs weren't too bad from set pieces yesterday. It was their open play stuff that absolutely killed them. Just 2 moments, and that was it. And that decided the game. And it must be so frustrating. The first one, I'm trying to think who put in the cross now. Was it Bowen? I've totally forgotten who put it. It was a lovely cross, don't get me wrong. But for me, that's just basic stuff. The ball comes into the box. Hugo Lloris is not taking charge. ball drops in the 6-yard box. Goalkeepers should be coming out, whether that's punching that away, whether that's grabbing it with their hands, whatever they're doing, they should be screaming at the defence and coming out and getting it. Obviously, one criticism of Lloris that's often used is that he doesn't come off his line enough. And I did feel that was a big one yesterday. But it wasn't just his fault. I felt Eric Dyer, he's the lead defender in that back line. He is the man that is meant to marshal that back line, act as almost like the captain of the defence. Not a call, just watched it sail over his head, didn't even jump. And then obviously it was Tanganga behind him, wasn't it? And Tanganga was, I don't think you could probably attach too much blame to Tanganga. I think he was just trying to come in from behind, trying to cover, and the ball's gone in between. And you do wonder if Dyer had thrown himself up, whether he could have got something on the ball. And then just the lack of reaction from everyone involved when Lloris did manage to save it, because they just stood about watching. Second goal, there were a few mistakes in there, but I'm going to probably pin this one on Davinson Sanchez, because for me, the challenge that he put in on Lingard, we say about Mourinho says to his players, he'd rather they just wipe them out, essentially. Davinson Sanchez, he's a big, strong guy. He pretty much did the tackling equivalent of politely tapping someone on the shoulder and asking them, "Could you please stop? I'd rather you didn't." It was so weak, so unbefitting of someone of Sanchez's stature and ability. We're going to come to that in a minute. A lot of people slated Davinson Sanchez, and I'm going to kind of explain why I feel that we're not seeing the best Davinson Sanchez in a minute. But I want to start with Eric Dyer. Eric Dyer, for me, obviously, his confidence is shot. Mourinho said it a couple of weeks back. You can see it. And I think the big thing for me, and this applies to Davinson Sanchez as well, Tottenham need a leader in that back line. I've just kind of said Lloris isn't leading so much from the back. I think he's a big voice in the changing room, stuff like that. But I feel on the pitch, having seen actually, early when the crowds weren't there, you could really hear Lloris. You haven't so much recently. I feel that he needs to be stepping up and taking charge of that defence. But also, like I said, I think you need a defender in that back line who is stepping up and marshalling it, who's, essentially is the captain of the back line, like I said. And I think Dyer's, whether it's his confidence or whether it's just something that maybe as a reformed centre-back rather than, someone that's played at centre-back all his career, and whether he's not confident enough to do that, Spurs desperately need that. And I feel that Davinson Sanchez desperately needs that. I don't think there's any coincidence that if you look back, Davinson Sanchez's best season was his first season. He was terrific. Don't let people tell you that Davinson Sanchez isn't a good centre-back. That's just the Davinson Sanchez we see today. Davinson Sanchez in that first season, alongside Jan Vertonghen, was superb. That was when Pochettino was saying this guy's got the potential to be one of the best defenders in the world. He was playing against Real Madrid and absolutely smashing it, keeping Ronaldo quiet. He was having massive games in the Premier League against some of the biggest sides, getting clean sheets. And I felt, for me, the difference was then you had Jan Vertonghen in his prime, in a balanced defence with a left footer alongside Sanchez, allowing him to always be on that right-hand side, talking him through matches, talking him through it, knowing Davinson Sanchez is still only 24. We're not talking about a guy that has developed. Centre-backs don't normally reach their prime. Like strikers, probably till 27, 28, maybe even older. And I felt that Vertonghen would talk him through games. Vertonghen was one of the vice-captains. He was a voice. He was a leader. He was someone that could, maybe wasn't, a chest-thumping kind of captain type that you'd normally see, but he was someone that would always talk to the fellow defenders and get them playing through games. And I feel Sanchez benefited from that massively. As the seasons went on, obviously, Vertonghen's form started to dip. He got some injuries as well, and you kind of saw Sanchez matched with various different partners, like Toby Alderweireld. Toby Alderweireld, for me, probably isn't one of those talker types, isn't a loud voice in the back line. He's a guy that just does his job, and he often does it very well. What I'd say about him this season, it was a tough one yesterday. If anyone saw my predicted team, I didn't expect him to start. And the reason for that is Pochettino is exactly the same. I feel that Mourinho and Pochettino both have this worry, maybe it's just something that's coming from the sports science staff, about not playing Toby Alderweireld in a run of games every 3 days. He can sometimes do 2 in a row, But you'll often find that if there's 3 in a week, he won't often play those 3 games. And I think that's a hallmark, a kind of a lingering aftermath of the serious hamstring problem he had, was it about 2-3 years ago now? And I think there's a fear that he could do that again. He could put himself, as they call it, into the red zone and into the limit of what his body can handle. And unfortunately, that means that you'll get games like yesterday that you probably would have wanted Alderweireld in there. What I would say, I think Alderweireld's been decent this season. Perhaps you could probably say he's been the best of the central defenders. But what I would say is it's not the Toby Alderweireld of old. It's not the top-notch Toby Alderweireld that we used to have alongside Jan Vertonghen. So I think, I wouldn't say he's been levels above Dyer and Sanchez. I do feel that he's probably been the best. But like I say, I do worry. I think the hamstring issue of the past is something that kind of haunts him now and means he can't always play every single match in every single week and every 3 days. But yeah, I feel we've lost that balance, Tottenham. I feel like it's no coincidence that Vertonghen and Alderweireld were so good together because left footer, right footer, knew each other's games from when they were kids. They played for years, decades together, back to their Ajax days. And like I say, I think Vertonghen was the talker. I think Vertonghen organised that back line. And right now, what you're getting is Eric Dyer, who's having confidence problems and obviously is relatively new to the position. You're getting Davinson Sanchez, who has a lot of the attributes to make a very good defender, but makes really one pretty dopey decision every single match. And I think he needs someone to stop him doing that, someone alongside him to tell him, instruct him. When he's 28, 29, he will have learnt these lessons and hopefully his decision-making will be much better. But he needs someone alongside him telling these things constantly through a match. And the defence yesterday, especially, you had Reguilon, very young guy on the left. You had Tanganga on the right. You really needed a voice in that back line. That's massively what Spurs are missing right now. So yeah, it's undercutting them in every match. It's cutting off their legs before they can walk, kind of thing. You just know, and maybe that's what has the impact on the strikers. Maybe the strikers feel we're going to have to outscore the defensive mistakes that Spurs are going to make. Yeah, it is. It's very frustrating. It really is. I mean, Lloris, like I say, has got a little part to play. I did feel we're starting to see a little moments from Lewis that have been better in terms of his shot stopping. Made a decent save yesterday. It was from a header. Was it Soucek's header? Obviously a good save, a terrific save against Wolfsberger as well in the week. So I think in terms of that side of his game, he just needs to be commanding again. Spurs need their leaders to step up. If you ever need a time for your leaders to step up, it's when things aren't going well. I think Højbjerg, unfortunately, is looking a bit knackered at the moment, a little bit tired. And I think that's why you're not seeing him quite be the leader. Same with Kane. I think Kane, as a leader in the team, should really be rallying these troops and getting them on. And for me, there's just that missing voice in the back line, which is something obviously that's going to have to be addressed in a transfer window. And by all means, Mourinho may have wanted it addressed before. But I mean, you look at what can he do with defence now. Obviously, the alternatives, Alderweireld, you think will come back in. It's a really difficult one now because you've got this match on Wednesday night against Wolfsberger AC. Which is not a dead rubber, of course. Anything can happen, but at 3 goals up and at home, Spurs should be really not having to play any of their key players. But then the flip side from Mourinho is he may well want to get a few of them back into their rhythm and confidence as well. So you could maybe play Alderweireld in Wednesday night's game, but then you run the risk of not being able to have him for the next couple of games because the games are still coming every 3 days. Joe Rodon obviously isn't registered. Joe Rodon's an interesting one. A lot of people saying, why wasn't Joe Rodon involved? I kind of understood what Mourinho's thinking was. Once you've picked Dyer and Sanchez, rightly or wrongly, whether you agree with that, you then have the bench, which has Alderweireld, and you have Davies, who can play left-back or centre-back. I kind of understand why, after that decision was made, Rodon's then not on there. The big thing about Joe Rodon is that he's a project. He's a work in progress. I think he's done pretty well when he's played. But ultimately, if you look at it, he's often played in a back 3. Mourinho's wanted to protect him with 2 other centre-backs just to kind of negate any kind of mistakes he's made. Are we at the stage now where Rodon just has to be given a chance? Or does Mourinho keep persisting with defenders that are making mistakes? It's a very difficult one. There's one hand, you could argue from a man management point of view, you can say to a player, I've got your back, I trust you. Go out there, you will get through this rough patch. It works sometimes, it gives them the confidence, it boosts them, then you see performances improve. The flip side is, you keep throwing them out there into the storm and they keep getting smacked. And, and it doesn't work. It has an adverse effect. So there's that. And then I'm not going to go into it, but people know my thoughts on Japhet Tanganga. I do feel that Mourinho was so rash in deciding that he's a right back, not a centre back, because I do think he's looked good every time he's played at centre back. I had someone the other day came back at me that, he's too short to be a centre back. I think the most recent Ballon d'Or winner, I say recent, it's not that recent nowadays, but who was a centre back was Fabio Cannavaro, wasn't it? Unless I've missed someone. I know Van Dijk obviously went close, but Cannavaro was not a tall guy. He was one of the best defender in the world that year. So I don't think the height's that important as long as you've got a good leap and you're dominant in what you do. And I do think Tanganga could be a terrific centre back, but I'm not paid the big bucks to manage Tottenham Hotspur, which is probably best on the whole, to be honest. But I do wonder whether we have to see Rodon and Tanganga given chances. Yes, they're young, and yes, Mourinho doesn't always put his trust in young players consistently to go out there, but things aren't working. And I do think, as I'm going to come to later, there's such a crunch little run of games coming up, crucial to Mourinho's future. I do wonder whether you just can't keep making the same mistakes and you just have to drill something different into this team. Or the flip side is you just say, hey, attack is the best form of defence. Go for it, lads. Just go. If we win matches 4-3, 5-4, so be it. We need to win matches. And then the defence will get more confidence as we go. And I don't know, but it's very depressing. I just realised how long I've been talking about the defence, and I think that sums up exactly where the problems lie at Tottenham. They really do. I feel a little bit of degree for sympathy for Mourinho. I think he's getting a lot of flack right now for decisions he's making, but then I feel he came out with a comment which we'll explore a little bit towards the end of this, where he said, there's problems at this club that I can't fix by myself. And one of the potential meanings of that is he's saying that if players are going to go out there, and experienced players, international players are going to go out there and just make silly, basic defensive errors, I can't fix that. I can only take them out of the team. And then obviously you look at what's left to come in, and you can kind of, the rights and wrongs, and everyone's got a different view on who should be playing. I think all of us would probably pick different centre-back pairings. Myself, if he's not going to see Tanganga as a centre-back pairing, I think you have a look at Alderweireld and Rodon. I think Rodon's probably more comfortable playing on the left, which helps Alderweireld, because I don't think he ever looks really comfortable when he's on the left-hand side. I think you give that partnership a little go. Obviously, like I said, you can't do it in midweek because Rodon's not registered for the Europa League. So you then look to take that into the league games that are coming, and I can't see why you don't, to be honest. I think you have to try something. You've got Reguilon back now, and he'll get fitter and sharper. Serge Aurier, I think, was a potential to come back for Burnley. So we'll see how that's going. We'll ask him this week. But, if you could get that pace down the sides with a little bit of help for Rodon as well. Reguilon very much would have to be told, and Højbjerg as well. Look, you're going to maybe have to come back and help this kid out. I say kid, he's not a kid, he's 23 now, 22, 23. But he is a young defender. He's going to need help from time to time. You're going to have to back him up. And maybe that's one of the keys. Maybe with Højbjerg, we saw Tottenham at their best, I always felt, was not only with the under Poch, was with Vertonghen and Alderweireld, but was when Dyer sat deep and came back and split the centre backs, which created that kind of out of possession. Was it in possession? In possession back three with full-backs bombing on into essentially becoming wing-backs. And I do wonder whether Højbjerg, that's the best role for him. Don't bother about getting up the pitch too much and pressing. Let other people do that. You just sit in front of that defence, anchor it, and when need be, step back, help if it's Rodon and Alderweireld, help them, and allow your fullbacks to push on. It will make the fullbacks more dangerous, and it just gives that little bit of solidity to the back line. Tongi Ndombele is now in a state of fitness where he is able to get box to box. He can now play that role in front of Højbjerg and get up and down the pitch. Late on yesterday, if you didn't see it, he ran back into like a left back slot to bail out Hugo Lloris, who did a terrible sliced kick. But Ndombele was there. I think maybe Antonio. I can't remember who it was. He got a foot in and saved Lloris's bacon, quite frankly. So I do think his fitness levels are now there to do that. Hopefully, João Celso will be back soon as well. A little clip, if anyone saw Tanguy Ndombele's Instagram story today of Ndombele. Looks like he had a ball. Looks like he was doing some outdoor ball work. So hopefully that's a good sign and that he's slowly coming back from that hamstring injury, which is, it's been a killer for Lo Celso. I feel sorry for him as well. Tottenham seem to take players who don't have injury problems and ruin them. They make them have these massive injury layoffs. Seems to be an Argentine thing as well, obviously with Eric Lamela as well. But get Lo Celso back, and I think that gives you another big option as well in the midfield. But yeah, I do wonder whether Højbjerg playing a deeper role, not getting too excited and getting up the pitch and playing that split the centre-backs role that Dyer used to play, might be a solution. But again, what do I know? What do I know? But I do think, we looked at centre-back a lot there. Mourinho needs to find his solution now. This is the thing. There's no looking to, we'll fix this in the summer transfer window, because if results don't pick up, there will become a point, and again, we'll talk about this in a little bit towards the end. I don't think he'll last the season. If they keep on the form they're in right now, I can't see how Mourinho would last the season. 5 defeats in 6. If the games coming ahead don't come out in a positive way, I don't think he can allow himself to, we'll fix this in the summer. He needs to find a solution now, where it's a short-term fix, whatever it is. They need to plug up that defence, because it's their massive Achilles heel in every game they're going into. Like I said, for all of the good that I saw yesterday against West Ham, it kind of was all for nothing because of what they were doing at the back. Let's talk about a positive. We need a positive. I feel like for 27 minutes I've talked about negatives. Gareth Bale. Praise the Lord. Gareth Bale is starting to look a little bit like the Gareth Bale of old. He's starting to look a bit more confident. He's starting to get some rhythm. And most of all, there's an intensity to his play. It was the word Mourinho used yesterday. It perfectly summed it up. There's an intensity to what he's doing. He is taking games. This is what I've called for in articles and videos, just to take the matches by the scruff of the neck. He is world class. He's a 4-time Champions League winner. He should not be calmly, kind of timidly sitting on the sidelines, on the wing, hoping the ball comes to him. He should be grabbing these games and just by the scruff of the neck and taking Tottenham on. And I felt, after a really good display against Wolfsberger AC, the reason I'm saying Wolfsberger AC, by the way, is they're either seem to be called Wolfsberger or Wolfsberger AC. A lot of us journalists have been calling him Wolfsberger, and I've had a couple of Austrian people tell me, hey, you're doing it wrong. They're not Wolfsberger. They can only be Wolfsberg or Wolfsberger AC. There's no Wolfsberger. So, out of respect, I'm trying to remember to keep doing that, because obviously we don't like it when everyone calls Tottenham Hotspurs, or, you wouldn't call them, Tottenham Hotspurs, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so yeah, Bale, superb, lovely goal, real glimpse of the old Bale, nice little dinked cross for Son, really good performance, 65 minutes. Obviously, Mourinho then said ahead of yesterday's game on the pitch, look, he's still at the stage where he can't start 2 games in 3 days. It's just where he is evolution-wise in his fitness right now. But what was really pleasing was that in the 45 minutes, he really gave it everything. He was quite measured. I felt he was balanced. When I say gave everything and is measured, what I mean is he selectively and cleverly chose the times to bomb on. So there were times in the second half when I saw him flying up the pitch, cutting inside, hitting crossfield balls. It was really lovely to see. There were other times when he thought to himself, look, if I overdo it now, I'm going to do myself a problem, or I'm going to absolutely knacker myself out to do any defensive work. And instead he would sit back and he would allow maybe Kane to come out to the right, or he would allow Doherty in the second half to go on ahead of him. And I just felt that was a massive plus yesterday, Bale. He's starting to get some confidence and a little bit of his mojo back. He came on, had a couple of shots at goal. He cuts inside and you just think something wonderful is going to happen with that left foot. He fired a couple of shots at the goal, then obviously pinpoint cross for Lucas Moura to head in, really nice header. I felt Lucas was quite lucky to be on in that second half. I feel the yellow card to Lamela essentially saved Lucas and obviously brought Spurs that equaliser. But I felt Lamela had a decent first half. But as soon as he got that yellow card, tied in with Reguilon and Højbjerg both been on yellow cards, I could see why Mourinho made that decision. I wouldn't say Lucas contributed massively. I felt it was one of those games where I felt he ran kind of into the defence rather than after the defence, if you know what I mean. He kind of did more often, ran into them, gave the ball away than he did actually causing chaos and havoc, which he can do. But the goal was lovely. Terrific header. He does that sometimes. He scored one at the Etihad, didn't he? Was it last season under Poch? He's got a really good spring on him. But yeah, so Bale, terrific cross, corner straight into him. And then we had that volley. After that moment where Kane hadn't found Ali or Son, the ball, came back to Kane. He teed it up, but it was quite bobbling. Bale just showed every bit of beautiful technique that he's got to kind of slice across the ball in a half volley. And honestly, if that had hit the crossbar and gone in rather than hit the crossbar and gone over, it would have been one of the goals of the season. It was prime Bale. It was a little bit reminiscent. Was it Stoke? Was it Stoke when he scored with a volley across the goal? It kind of had that feel to it. And I just felt that was a really positive 45 minutes. It kind of leaves a slight dilemma now. What do you do with him for Wednesday night? Do you maybe give him 45 minutes to an hour and then hope that his fitness has built up enough that he can then start against Burnley? Or do you not start him, bring him on late against Wolfsburg and maybe for the last 20 minutes or so just to keep him ticking over and then he starts against Burnley? It's a tough one. I think it needs to be played exactly right because, Bale, in this kind of Bale that we're now seeing, is the Bale that can help Tottenham, the Bale that can have an impact, the Bale that can produce little moments of magic to dig Tottenham out of holes in matches. And I think they desperately, desperately need this Gareth Bale. Mourinho's got to play it absolutely spot on because I felt he was, I thought he was really good. It was really good. I gave him an 8, I think, in my ratings because I felt he was kind of quite head and shoulders actually above everyone else on the pitch. Played really, really, really well. It's all about Mourinho at the end of the day. I kind of feel that we've spoken a little bit about Mourinho and I haven't really kind of gone into the crux of things and Mourinho and his future. I've said this before and I'll say it again. The Mourinho decision was always all on Daniel Levy. Daniel Levy wanted Mourinho at the club. He's chased him for almost 2 decades now. Wanted him when he was at Porto, didn't get him. Wanted him at other occasions, didn't get him. To make the huge decision of sacking your manager who had been there for 5.5 years, and Mauricio Pochettino, who had only 5 months ago taken Spurs to their first Champions League final, was a huge decision. Even if, we could see what was going on the pitch. Of course it wasn't great, and you could see that everything needed a big old fresh injection of life. Whether that was meant to be the manager or whether it was meant to be players, well, we'll never know right now. But it was still a huge decision to get rid of Pochettino and replace him with Jose Mourinho. All what you're seeing right now is going to be the test of resolve for Daniel Levy to see just how important that decision, how much he wants that decision to be right. Because obviously, fans not happy with Mourinho. It's really difficult to tell. If you look at social media, it will certainly would tell you the bulk of fans are unhappy. But it's very difficult because, as I always say, social media gives you extremes. It gives you loud voices. It's not always the best way of taking a straw poll. It may well be. It may well be the majority of fans want Mourinho out. Like I've always said, for me, probably the true test would be having the fans in the stadium and hearing them. And I do also feel that Spurs could really do with fans in the stadium. Just push them on. They need that lift right now. But like I say, the other side of it is you can gauge how the fans are actually seeing them live and their reactions. I don't want to say the proper fans because that's not fair at all because people from across the world are proper fans. They just can't get to games. But it just gives you a real sense of people who are there week in, week out and kind of, as I always say, same with me covering matches. When I'm at a stadium, you just see that little bit more. You just get that bigger sense of everything that's going on rather than what you're allowed to see in the kind of tunnel vision of it. But still, as again, it could be that all fans are there. So it's a huge one. Just one little point that just made me laugh yesterday. in my flack for my tweet that I got a lot of people agreeing with the tweet, but obviously, like I say, you get the noisy types. And one guy said, "Oh, there we are once again, Alasdair, always remaining impartial. What an embarrassing journalist, or embarrassing journalism, lazy journalism." Apart from other issues with his tweet that I kind of don't want to go into because it's not fair, journalists are meant to be impartial. That's kind of the whole point. We're meant to remain objective, which is why hopefully you won't see me going ridiculously extreme in either side of view, because that's kind of the point of journalism. We're meant to look at all sides and not get too invested and not get too many agendas. Naturally, of course, there may be certain players that wind you up and maybe you sometimes don't see their good points, of course. But yeah, I did find that quite funny. God, there he is, being impartial. What embarrassing journalism. No, mate. Impartiality is exactly what journalism is meant to be. I think it maybe just chose the wrong word, perhaps. But anyway, I digress. Mourinho and Levy. Yes, so for Levy, he has to stick with his man for now. He has to. So I'm really aware the light on this keeps changing. You're probably going to get me really bright and you're probably going to get me quite dark. I think it's me moving backwards and forwards, which isn't really helping. So apologies for that. As I say, trying to find out new parts in this room. But yeah, so Levy will give Mourinho time to try and turn things around. There's no people saying he's lost the dressing room is rubbish. He hasn't. You can see that. The players are playing to try and win matches for him. They are. You saw that yesterday. Second half, Spurs, they were throwing everything. There's no indication that players aren't playing for Mourinho. There will be unhappy players not playing. Of course there will. Winks and Sissoko didn't even get on yesterday. Alderweireld could well be unhappy if he feels he can start these matches. There's various players. Carlos Vinicius, for example, wasn't delighted when he, scored the other day. Didn't celebrate too much. He could well be frustrated. But on the whole, I do think the players are playing for him. I don't think that's a case you can look at it and feel that he's lost the dressing room or anything like that. I don't think that's the case. And I think when that happens, or you see that players are starting to be really disgruntled, I think that's when management and chairman, and they go to the chairman. I've said this before, Harry Kane is all-powerful at Tottenham Hotspur. He really is such a dominant figure. And I feel that if Kane was making noises about Mourinho not being the man for the job, I think you'd soon see things spiralling. And I don't think that's the case. I think, as Mourinho said, they are in a rotten run right now. They're absolutely not showing the confidence. They're not finishing stuff off. We won't go into defence again, but the defence needs to be fixed. But I do feel that these next 3 games are crucial. I cannot stress how important these matches are. So you've got Burnley at home on Sunday. You've got Fulham away on Thursday night. And then Crystal Palace at home on the Sunday. So you're looking at the teams that are in 15th, 18th and 14th in the table. I don't care about... No excuses. Tottenham have to win these 3 matches. I don't care whether those 3 teams are in form, whether Tottenham have certain players out, whatever. Tottenham Hotspur should be winning those 3 matches. And I think it's so important that they do that on every level. Obviously, 9 points behind 4th place now, albeit with a game in hand. They need to start plugging that gap back up again. They need to get confidence. They need to get momentum. They need to... Well, I can't put it any more plain than this. The match after those 4, and we're only talking about Premier League ones, is Arsenal. It's the North London derby. I think it's March 13th? At the Emirates on a Sunday afternoon. Tottenham have to be coming into that game with some form and momentum back behind them. And quite frankly, if Spurs can't beat, and this is no disrespect to them, but if you're looking at those teams at that point of the table, 2 of them at home, if Tottenham can't beat and take 9 points from Burnley, Fulham and Crystal Palace, Mourinho has to question himself. Levy has to enormously question what's going on with the team, because those are 3 games, whatever confidence you're in, you just win those games. If you grind it out, whatever you do, you win those games. And then obviously the North London derby, you get something out of that game. And I think that's why I say those 3 games for me are crucial for Mourinho's future as well. Because it's all very well, he was saying yesterday about, he's going on about the Europa League and the Carabao Cup final. And I get that, yes, fair play. Got to the Carabao Cup final, terrific achievement. Europa League, yes, likely to progress into the round of 16, but you cannot pin all your hopes, put your eggs in those two baskets of a Carabao Cup final that's got Man City that are blowing everyone away right now. Yes, they could be in a different stage of form by then, but ultimately, that's going to be a hell of a tough game to win. Europa League, you've still got United, Arsenal, Leicester, not to mention the top foreign sides in there as well. That is no given that Tottenham are going to get, through the stages to win that. So pinning your hopes on maybe getting into Champions League through Europa League, yes, you can look at Mourinho and say in cup ties he's got a far better record, but Spurs haven't been terrific in cup ties under Mourinho so far. This is a very different team. He's got less points at this stage in his career at a club with Tottenham than he has at any other club, because it's a different club, different circumstances, different finances, different strength, all of this. But I don't like this. Let's put our faith in the cups, because that's where it will all come from. Spurs finish, let's say, 6th and win the Carabao Cup. For me, yeah, it's a bit of silverware, but I still feel Tottenham will have regressed. I don't feel the Carabao Cup is... I think maybe Europa League would be slightly different, but for me, the Carabao Cup, is that an indicator of moving forwards? Yes, it's silverware. Juan Ramos won the League Cup. Was it the Carling Cup or Worthington Cup? I don't remember what it was now. League Cup. He was gone, 3-4 months later? Maybe 5 months later? It doesn't... It's. I wouldn't use it as your guiding indicator on a management success. I think if Spurs, Spurs under Pochettino, top four consecutive years, top 3 for 3 consecutive years, second place in there. I think if Spurs are going to go back to a team that's happy to then just finish 6th, 7th or whatever, that's regression. That's going back to what at the time under Martin Jol was where he got Spurs up to that and 5th and 6th, and that was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. But that was what we're looking at, 2006, 7. You're looking at almost 13 years ago, more than 13 years ago, 14 years ago. That's regression if we're looking at that being a good thing. Tottenham need to be top 4 financially in this year. They need to be getting top 4. So for me, being happy with top 6 in the Carabao Cup shouldn't be the marker, really, for me, for the success of Mourinho's season. It would be terrific to get a cup. No one's sniffing at a cup. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going down the Poch, it's just for egos and things like that route. Although I still will always say that was slightly taken out of context. I kind of understood what he meant by that. But, yeah, Tottenham need to... These next 3 games are crucial. I cannot stress that enough. I think Spurs need to take 9 points from that. I think they need 9 points from these 3 games and then go into the North London derby in a big load of confidence. And I think if we get to the end of this 4-game period and results have not been great, I think people at the club start to really wonder what happens next. And you look at what would be an incredibly expensive decision to let Mourinho go, but ultimately, can you afford to just keep going backwards? I do think he's been unlucky. I think he's had some absences at tough times. I think he's had players making individual mistakes. I just want to quickly come back to it. I said at the start, he came out with his comment about, I can't solve these problems all by myself. It could have been about individual errors with the players. It could have been about senior players not stepping up. It could have also been about transfers stuff. I've had people weirdly criticising me last week because people get angry. I get it. I get that you dig out old stuff. And they kind of dug out me saying that last summer I thought was a 9 out of 10, really good window. Would have been a 10 had they got an experienced centre-back. I don't change that opinion. I don't get kind of what they want me to say on that. It's only a couple of people. We're not talking about lots of people, and they've been really quite aggressive in it. I don't get that. I still think that was a 9 out of 10 window. With hindsight, of course you look back and you say Doherty hasn't done what you want him to do yet. He hasn't settled in yet. You look at Bale and you say, yeah, Bale hasn't been the Bale. I'm sorry, but you look at that time and you look at what was done in that window. That was a terrific window. It really was. Every player coming in was fixing a problem that Spurs wanted. Whether some of those players subsequently have not hit the heights they should have is a different thing. Should the January window have been used to further fix problem? Yes. I think in an ideal world, I think with money and finances available, I think Spurs, yes, having looked at the problems in the defence, should have still gone for an experienced defender or one certainly that could lead that back line. You know, I've seen people talk about Ruben Dias. Of course, he's been class. Ruben Dias was like 65 million or so. Spurs were not able to pay 43, I think it was, for Skriniar. So, you know, it's different leagues we're talking about in a way. But yeah, no, I just find that a really funny one. I don't know why I was getting picked out for that one. I could understand if I'd said, oh, well, January window, what are you going to do? But yeah, no, I would have liked that. I think in an ideal scenario, and finance has been great, I think they should have really fixed that issue in January, but they couldn't. They clearly don't have the funding to do that. And yes, I know about Joe Lewis and all of this, but if anyone knows Tottenham, you know the way it's run. It's not money funneling in from a sugar daddy. It's not where it's always been a self-sufficient organisation. But yeah, so yeah, sorry, there's a little mini rant there. But yeah, so Levy, I think if we get to the end of this little 3 to 4 game period, and I think if things haven't picked up, then I think that's when things are looked at. But I think he'll give him every opportunity possible to try and turn things around because, you know, Daniel Levy, Tottenham, you look at it, Spurs have sacked 9 managers, I think it is, under Daniel Levy. The managers have come and gone. He has stayed. I don't think there'll be any focus on Daniel Levy if Mourinho was to be go. I think people like to look at managers, and I think that's the way it's done. I don't think Daniel Levy can escape criticism at all. I think to have won one trophy in 20 years or something as a chairman, I think you have to have a look at the way you've done stuff as well. It was interesting, you know, Mourinho was asked yesterday whether he questioned his methods after the recent run. He said, no, absolutely zero. I still believe that me and my coaching team are second to none. And you kind of feel that perhaps Daniel Levy's a little bit the same way. Maybe that's why he wanted him. There's that same inner belief in what they're doing. But in terms of financial results, yeah, you can't doubt him. Can't doubt what he's achieved in terms of building the club's profile, the stadium, the training ground, everything. I think that side, separate that, absolutely sensational. In terms of success on the pitch, I think he surely has to question the way he's done stuff. I think that there could be managers that have gone before their time. There could be times when maybe they just had to push the boat out on transfers. But yeah, I think there's got to be a little sense of that. If he makes Mourinho the 10th manager he's sacked in 20 years, but you say 10 in 20, you look at Pochettino had 5.5 to almost 6 years as a manager. Take that out of those 20 years, and you're looking at a very brief average time for managers, and they're permanent managers. That's not including caretaker types and things like that as well. I think you have to look at that scenario and wonder whether you're making the right choices if you are just going to pull the trigger. And I do wonder if that also plays its part in giving Mourinho a little bit of time with his track record. We shall see. We shall see. I'm aware I've waffled on for way longer than I wanted to, so apologies for that. But like I say, Burnley, Fulham, Palace, then the North London derby. I don't care what the excuses are. They have to win certainly those 3 games and then get something from the Emirates. Otherwise, I think things start to really spiral. You know, this run has to end, and I think the confidence levels need to return. So, apologies if I missed anything. I went off on tangents. Apologies for the wall that needs a good painting. But yeah, and apologies for a couple of rants in there as well. But that's what Tottenham Hotspur does to you. So I'm going to head off now. Obviously, I'll be at Wolfsberger against Wolfsberger AC on Wednesday night. And then we've got this run of games where Spurs need things to happen. So I shall catch you later. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves, and hopefully we'll have more positive stuff to talk about in the future. Talk to you later. Bye.